I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And I have joining me today the CEO and President of West Red Lake Gold Mines, Shane Williams. Welcome, Shane.
Hello, Michael. Good to be on.
It's very good to have you. I met one of your colleagues, Amandeep, in Quebec City, and he was telling me all about your plans for the Madsen Project, and I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm looking forward to us having our chat. But before we get started on that, not everybody's going to know what West Red Lake Mines is. Let's give them the elevator pitch as to who the company is.
West Red Lake really started as more of an exploration company. We had a project originally called Rowan, which is over on the west side of West Red Lake. So that's how the name came about. And so we were early exploration. Really, then the opportunity came along on the Madsen mine, which some of your viewers will know was historically the pure gold mine. And that opportunity came along. It went into the CCA process, bankruptcy process in Canada, and we saw the opportunity to go in and take over that operation. And we did that process. Sprott were the main holders of the debt there, and we did a deal with Sprott and the process, and we ended up taking over the pure gold assets, basically. And so we now have our Rowan, which is our exploration play, and we have a development story, which is the Madsen mine. And the long-term vision is to consolidate within that region of West Red Lake. Obviously, now we have a mill and infrastructure and tailings, and there are a lot of smaller deposits around West Red Lake where we can use as a sort of a hub and spoke model to build out a large portfolio of projects using the Madsen mill as the focus.
Well, I have to tell you, I have had a very long history with that Madsen project, going all the way back to Claude Resources. And although you've gotten it cents on the dollar, when I first sat down with Amandeep in Quebec City, I have to say I was, quite skeptical. It seemed like it was a mountain that miners climbed up on to die. And I wanted to find out why you guys acquired it and what you were going to do differently than the last operator to make it a viable project.
Yeah, maybe I'll just step back a little bit and give you some of the background of why I like the opportunity, really. My background, Michael, is more of I'm a mine builder sort of operator. I've had a long history around the world building and operating mines. And so really it was the Frank Guistra's team that was behind a lot of this. And so they approached me on the opportunity. And why I liked it is, there's a saying in this industry that you should take on projects or operations that you're really suited for. The project should suit the people who are going to take it on. And so my background is very project development and operations. And so I'm not really an early exploration sort of guy who can lead that. But so the plan really is we looked at the asset. I spent a long time doing my own due diligence on that before I got in. And the focus was to build a real company going forward and use the Madsen mill as an opportunity to do that. And so we started to build a bit of a team around that, an operational team. And I think that's one of the key differences. The original team that was put together with Pure Gold was more early stage exploration and more, prospectors taking on that project and promotional team. And so they went through a process of doing the exploration, of taking on the project. And when we looked at that, we saw an opportunity. Some shortcuts had been taken, some ways of doing it that we wouldn't be comfortable with. So we decided to put together a team and go on that. The fundamental difference is the asset itself is good quality. Pure Gold had put $350 million into building a mill, tailings dam, underground development, and have permits in place. And in today's market, there's very little opportunity to take on a project at that advanced stage to move it forward. You have a lot of inflation in the gold industry at the moment. You have permitting, takes time. These mines typically take 10 to 15 years from start to finish to build an operation. And we managed to get this operation very cheaply and be able to get it into production in a reasonable sort of time. So that's what excited me about the opportunity, and use that to build on within the Red Lake region.
Now, one of the things on your resume that struck me and made me stand up and take notice was you were the senior VP of operations for Eldorado Gold, which had history in Red Lake as well as other operations around the world. Right off the top, and that caused me to take notice that, okay, now we have an operational guy in charge, and we're less likely to see some of the issues that had cropped up with the previous operator.
Yeah, that's my background really. And one project that maybe your listeners will be aware of is when I was at Eldorado, I was involved in most of their projects and operations. I worked in Turkey. They have a number of big operations in Turkey. They have some projects in Greece, which I actually bid for them and got them into commissioning. And more recently with Eldorado, I was with a project called the Madsen Project, which was a project owned by Integra Resources team. And we put together a team. We purchased that from Integra. And at that stage, it only had a PEA in place. But it took over the next 18 months, we basically took that from a PEA, PFS, feasibility study, underground development. We built a mill and got that into operation in an 18-month period. Really a record project. It was in Quebec. There are differences and the ability to do things quicker in Quebec. But yeah, it was an 18-month basically from taking over into production. And that today is one of the best performing assets within the Eldorado portfolio. So I saw a lot of synergies between what I had done there successfully and what we could be applying to the Madsen operation. So that's kind of my background. And since then, we've added a lot of key senior people from existing operators who have a lot of experience in building and operating mines. And to support that, we've added a board. Our board is consistent of key company builders. We have people like Tony McCooch, who you'll know from Kirkland Lake, who really built Kirkland Lake into a powerhouse of a large company that it was over many years. We've also added on Duncan Middlemass, who built Wesdome Gold Mining as well. So, and Hugh Agro just recently. So I think we have a good blended mix of senior technical experienced leaders and more junior up and coming guys who can support and get this thing in operation. So I think that differentiates us a lot from the previous management, Michael.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I also like the money behind the project. Sprott still is involved, Eric Sprott and his companies. But I like the fact that Frank Guistra had stepped up to the plate on this since he was one of the original Red Lake mining gurus, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as well. Frank was originally one of the investors around this, and Frank was one of the ones who convinced myself to come in and build a team. And Frank has a history of, building major companies, and Frank also is very good at timing. When he was involved originally in the Gold Corp, which was really built on Red Lake and the success and high grade of Red Lake, he went in at the right time when he felt that gold in the 2000s was going to do a big run. And obviously from that, he built Gold Corp into what it was with other people and the team. And so he's been out of the industry a while, and he sees West Red Lake as his opportunity to get back into Red Lake, to get into high grade and build another company and use that as a benefit. And obviously with his backing, he has a lot of previous backers who, when Frank goes into something, they take notice. And more importantly, Michael, as well, they're also long-term holders. Frank is in it for the long term. He's bringing in some people who are very, very long-term holders who want to see this go into the likes of a Gold Corp type of phase 2. Sprott is behind us as well. Sprott had a big debt load still left over from the CCA process. So a lot of our shareholders we have a good institutional sort of base of shareholders that were there for the longer term, definitely as we go forward. So that's a good base to have with a team, good financial backing, and a good asset. I think they're a good combination to build a large company on.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Now, when I was having my other conversations with regards to all of this. The other thing that struck me was that it wasn't it was as much as maybe the wrong people in the wrong roles, but it was a runway situation where Pure Gold was simply cutting corners and moving quicker than maybe they should have been because they were on a short runway. Can you explain how that came about and how you guys have the luxury of time going forward?
Yeah, I don't want to be too disparaging on the previous management, obviously, because they did things in a context. But again, at a high level, they took on debt. They took on a lot of debt as they were going to develop this project with the Sprott group. And so a lot of that debt had a lot of covenants attached to that debt. And so getting into production was a key one of them. So they really pushed hard to get the project into production as quick as possible. And as they did that, they made a lot of decisions that, looking back, were not the right decisions. They went and leased a lot of equipment. They didn't allocate their capital. They spent a lot of capital on their mill and their infrastructure. They didn't spend as much on the definition drilling underground. Where these deposits are veiny type systems, they need a lot of definition drilling. So there's a couple of key areas like that. Where we identified during the DD process that definitely could be our advantage going forward. And they had some wrong people in there. I'm very close to the end of the turnaround before they finally went into the CCA process. They were actually just getting it right. They had brought in some key people near the end. They'd managed to right the ship a little bit, and they were getting the last 6 months of production, which we reviewed. We're actually getting very close to getting where they should have been. Unfortunately, they had gone too far. The debt was outstanding. The thing fell apart. But for us going in, we could see that they were getting in the right areas. They were mining in the right areas. They were getting the production up. So that's very encouraging for us that they were getting there. They were beginning to get there. And we, as an example, we went in and done a deal on a very good deal, pennies on the dollar, effectively, and we've no debt. We converted the Sprott debt into equity, so they're a large holder now in our company. As well as we done the deal, we raised and we did a private placement and an equity raise. And so we raised $25 million, basically. So we have really the benefit of no debt, which gives us some opportunity to take our time and de-risk this asset. And we have some money in the bank as well, which allows us to do more definition drilling, more definition, and really de-risk this asset over time before we even think about restarting. And I think that's a real advantage for us with the technical team we have, that we can get in there, de-risk this asset, work through the stages of the project as you would, do the drilling, do the definition drilling, and then look at potentially down the road, maybe it's 18 to 24 months of a potential restart. So I think the other management didn't have that opportunity. We're in a unique position with the backers we have and the way it was done to have that benefit on our side.
That's a good thing. Yeah, that was the one disappointment when the project failed with the last operator. It did look like they were finally getting some lift off, but there was no more runway left for them to go down. So
I would think if there was, we say another 6 or 8 months of time and some money, they would have actually got there, which it's to our advantage in that it was beginning to get set up right on the ground. It was beginning to turn around, which that's one of the reasons we also are very keen on this asset. It wasn't as like they didn't get there. They were just beginning to get there. And we saw that opportunity that if we can get in and right ship it and do the technical de-risking, then there's a real opportunity on our hands. So that's part of it as well, Michael.
Now, we keep talking about de-risking. I am guessing that the strategy going forward is to take steps that are going to help de-risk this project. So what are those steps going forward, and what's the timeline looking like?
Yeah. Look, at previous companies I've worked with, large companies, as you're well aware, they do a very stage gate approach to building these projects. They take their time, they do it stages. They're not as, some of the juniors move into these projects very quickly and you end up with issues. So part of it will be, they went forward without a feasibility study, as I would say. And so there's a stage process as you build these projects forward. You do PEAs, which is a preliminary economic study. You do a pre-feasibility study, then you do a feasibility study. And at each of those phases, you're doing a body of work. So you're doing definition drilling, you're doing geotechnical work, you're doing metallurgical work. So all those, we're going to step right back and reset those as we do those and stage it through. And at every stage, we'll make an assessment that, yes, we're at the stage, we have very good criteria, and we have a very technical board who will help us with that before we move to the next stage. And so that's a process that most of the big companies are very good at. And so that's why we built a fantastic board who have built these companies and understand that. So I think by a combination of the team, the staged approach with the drilling, the definition drilling, the metallurgical test work, the next stage moving into it, and then as we go forward, before we'll do all that process before we're even ready to think about starting project again.
For investors that are looking in the short term, what tasks of that de-risking is going to come first?
So part of it will be now, we're just getting ready to do put drills back underground. So and do some development underground. We've some development to do underground to build drill stations to set up our drills for underground drilling. So that's something that's very exciting. We're working on very quickly. We only closed this asset back in June, so we're moving very quickly to get back underground, to get into that definition drilling, to define that ore body very well. So results will come from that very quickly. And we're hoping to go down. Pure Gold never went down into the heart of the system. These red leg systems run very, very deep, and they never got the opportunity to get down into the heart of that deposit because they drilled a lot from surface. They hadn't the development done. We're down now very deep in the deposit because of that development, and that allows us to get into the lower levels and then drill further down deep to test the depth of this deposit. And just for some history of some of your viewers, that's what really happened at the Red Lake mine, which was a Gold Corp at the time. They managed to get down deep. They put some big, deep drill holes into it. And that's really, they got down into a body, an ore body that was 16, 18 gram material, which these ore bodies tend to have deeper down. So that was the opportunity at the Red Lake mine, which Gold Corp became and built upon that. We see some similarities there and some opportunity to do that as well.
So this delineation drilling that you're doing, it's likely to increase the mineral resource for this project and make it even more, palatable for an investor, right?
Yes, we're very excited about this drilling. It gives us two opportunities. One is to define better the resource that's there for mining, for potentially going back in. But as part of that, we also want to test the depths of the system and try to expand the system so that we will hopefully increase the mineral resource inventory available. So I think that's what will drive a lot of the excitement for the investors as we go down into the depths of the system. I would also add that, Pure Gold, there's a big land package there, and there's lots of showings and lots of smaller opportunities. And Pure Gold never did really work. We do intend to get a drill on these earlier showings and do some drilling in those. There's some early resources in some of these regional targets. They're all within 2 to 3 kilometers of the Madsen mill. And again, these could potentially be feeds to the Madsen mill. So we do want to get a drill out there, do some drilling. And some of this stuff, again, very similar to Madsen, is high-grade material. So that's potentially a catalyst that people can see. Not only are we focusing on Madsen, we're bringing in these regional targets where you have this hub and spoke system to be able to really push the whole structure rather than just focus on Madsen. Again, that's part of the de-risking. Madsen mine, Pure Gold focused on Madsen, and they tried to bring everything from Madsen to the mill. We see a little bit of de-risking where we can have some of these satellite deposits feed into with Madsen, and that gives a little bit of opportunity for de-risking and different opportunities. So that's part of the de-risking strategy I was talking about, Michael.
Now, the exploration play that you guys have separate from the Madsen, is it close enough to the mill that it could provide mill stock and help de-risk further?
Yeah, again, that's on the other side of the lake. It's about 80 kilometers by road. Again, that was an early stage exploration play till Madsen came in. That's really a feed for Madsen. That's the idea of that project now. Since we've secured Madsen, we're really fast tracking that project. We've started to do some environmental baselines. We started to do some metallurgical test work. Again, we just released yesterday some spectacular results out of that, and very high grade results out of that. And that's becoming a typical Red Lake system. The deeper we get, the higher grade. So again, we see a scenario where this can be mined very selectively, but very, very high grade. We had results like 50 grams over 5 meters, and those sort of higher grade that are associated with Red Lake. So yeah, we're excited about that and how it feeds into the Madsen mill as a feed. And over the next number of weeks, we have drills turning there. News will be coming from that to show the excitement around that opportunity.
Yeah, it's good when you see an old project get a second chance at life. And if you were going to leave investors with one final thought on everything, what would that be?
Yeah, so I would just go back a little bit to the history of Frank Guistra and the opportunity that was created from early stage when Wheaton River with Gold Corp and built upon that. I'm very excited about this opportunity, and there's an opportunity now to get in early. We are a small company in the size of it. I expect us to go large and use the drill bit and potentially M&A in the opportunity to grow very big. Obviously, we have to do Madsen and get that right, but I would see a big opportunity and a bigger play in the region of that, just like Frank did originally. So my message to investors is now is really the time to get in and be part of the journey as we go forward, Michael, and be part of the growth story, which I believe this company will be over the next number of years.
Perfect. If people want to follow the company, get a hold of you, how would they do so?
The website is westredlakegold.com. That's our main website. We are on the TSX-V and the OTC. My details are on the website. People can contact me correctly. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm always open for email from investors and discussions. And my email is swilliams@WRLGold.com.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for joining me, Shane, and I look forward to chatting in the future as this project rolls out and de-risks itself.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you.
The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.